Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, we've got the information for you right here, and Dave's going to tell you about it.
Absolutely, guys. We use this awesome application called Anchor FM. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free.
And who doesn't like free?
Yeah, free's huge. That's what got us involved with it. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. So you don't need all those fancy gadgets. You can have them if you want them, but not absolutely necessary.
Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other platforms.
Which is great. More people can hear us.
Who doesn't want more people to hear us?
I mean, I like to be heard.
I like to talk.
Another great thing is you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Like 0 people could listen to you and you could still possibly make some money.
That's amazing.
How does that even happen? It's everything you need right here to make a podcast in one place.
It's a one-stop shop and it's all you need. Anchor FM.
Yeah, so you guys, if you want to start this podcast, go to anchorfm.com to get started. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Apogee Podcast, coming to you from the Apogee Therapy Center recording studio. My name is David Carter.
And I'm Kevin Harrington.
Kevin, man, what's going on?
Not much.
Dude.
I'll just be honest.
The weather's been a little trippy. Were you cold this morning?
It was. I had to bring the flowers in, I was told to, and so I did that. But
yeah, just to preface, we're out of South Carolina, so anything cooler than 65 degrees is a little cold out
you're
here.
going to freeze everything. So anyway, who are we in today? What are we doing today?
Yeah, man. So today is a very special guest. Today we are extremely honored to have CrossFit broadcaster and co-host of the Talking Elite Fitness podcast, Sean Woodland. Sean has been in broadcasting for more than 20 years in both television and radio. He has been to Super Bowls, NCAA basketball tournaments, BCS championship games, the Daytona 500, the Players Championship, and of course, the one that is most notable to many of us, one of the faces and broadcasters of the CrossFit Games.
So he's done it all.
The man has literally done it all, and I can't wait to hear more about it.
All right. Well, welcome, Sean Woodland.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on over.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite, man.
Yeah,
that was
man.
a great intro.
Absolutely. Well, you've got a lot of accolades.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So before we dig into all things fitness and CrossFit, we really want to get to know you personally and a little bit more of your background. So let's just get right into it. Just like every story, we'll start from the beginning. Where are you from? What kind of family life did you have growing up? And was sports a big part of your growing up?
Okay, so I was born in Long Beach, California. When I was about, I think, 1 year old, less than a year old, my parents moved north to Sacramento, and that is where I grew up. Spent all of my formative years in Sacramento, California. I lived in the suburbs. Like, it was a great little town outside of Sacramento, Carmichael, California. It was awesome. It was like a bunch of kids were there. We were typical like suburban neighborhood, out running around in the street all the time. Riding bikes, big wheels, playing football. Come home when the street lights turn on. Just let me know where you are. That type of deal. Here's $5. Go up to Dairy Queen and get yourself something.
Nice.
It was. I was very lucky. I had a great childhood. Just a real fun place to grow up. And yeah, I loved sports growing up. My first real love was football. Mm-hmm. And I can remember at a real young age starting to watch it and just being really interested in it. My parents would buy me books about it, and I would just sit there and I'd love the X's and the O's and drawing up the formations and the plays and not really knowing kind of what they were all about. But there was just something that I loved. And I've been watching football. I've been a football fan for as long as I can remember. Big hockey fan as well. That kind of occurred later in life, although I really got interested in it around 6 years old because that's when the Miracle on Ice happened, and I vaguely remember that. Mm-hmm. But started playing as a kid when I was a little older. Wish I would have started when I played younger. But played soccer, played baseball, played tennis. What else? But when I got to high school, I really tried to focus on football and hockey. Those are my real passions. I figured out pretty early on, like, if you didn't get to wear a helmet and hit people, I wasn't A, very good at it, or B, really interested in it. So
had to be physical.
So I saw a picture on your Facebook page. Did you play a little bit of minor league hockey?
No. What that was, so when I worked in Jacksonville,
okay,
there was It was a Southern Hockey League, Southern Professional Hockey League, I think is what it was called. It was like a AA team,
Right.
maybe. And
Was that the Solar Bears?
No,
That's
was
out
the
of Orlando,
Solar
yeah.
Bears. Yeah, they were the old, now defunct IHL.
Okay.
They were kind of AAA. I think the IHL and the AHL used to be sort of on the same level. Then the IHL folded. Now it's just the AHL. But anyway, so the Barracuda showed up, and they basically invited me to take part in training camp with them. So I did this whole kind of series of stories where I went and I did training camp with the Barracudas, and they suited me up for a game. I didn't get to play, obviously. They were going to throw me out there, but got to take warm-ups with them, gave me a jersey. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. And going through practice with those guys, it's really funny. You really get an idea of like how good the top level of any league really is. Because these guys were AA and were phenomenal. They were fast, they were strong, they could shoot, and it was I had to bust my butt just not to get left really far behind. So it was kind of like prepping me for CrossFit, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you are a state champion in California for your midget hockey team.
That was true. We did win a state championship in 1991, I think. Yeah. Yep. Wow, you guys.
So
went
y'all
deep on that.
are the original Mighty Ducks then.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But, it was a great tournament. I was 17 years old, so I think it was 90. Was I 17? Yeah, it was 91. And we went down to Southern California, and it was a 3-team tournament. I kind of feel robbed because through some weird confluence of events, like the final game that we played, we had to win. Now, I was told by 5, but we actually had to win by 4 to win the whole tournament. So we end up beating this team by 4, and I think we've lost. And I look down at the far end, and I'm like, dejected. And I looked down at the far end of the ice, and everyone who was like not as dumb as me was like dogpiling on my brother in the net. And I looked at this guy, Chad, next to me, and I wait, did we just win? And so I didn't get that like build up at the end of the game.
So you were robbed, man. That's horrible.
Yeah, it was nuts, but it was cool. It was cool seeing my brother be in goal for that one. So that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome that you guys were playing on the same team. So how much is he older than you? And was that kind of a theme as you? Okay, was that kind of a theme as you guys grew up? Were you guys always on the same teams, or was that just
no? It's weird. My brother really never got into sports. I was much more athletically active than he was. Mm-hmm. He tried some things and never really liked it. He was much more into computers and that kind of thing. But then when he found hockey, he really liked it, and he was really good at it. And he has that goalie mentality. You got to be a little off.
It's all about angles.
Yeah, like punters and kickers, they're all a little weird, So my brother really had the mentality for it. He was good. He was really good at it, and one of the main reasons we won a state championship.
Now it's a well-known fact, if you follow you on Facebook, you're a huge fan of the Rams in general.
Yeah.
So there's a picture of you. Did you play quarterback in high school?
I was a linebacker and an offensive.
There's a good picture of you with your dad, and you had the mullet.
Yes.
How long did you rock that for?
So probably way too long, but back in those days, it was just called hair. It wasn't called a mullet. Like everybody had a mullet in the 80s. Like
business in the front, party in the back.
It's absolutely. And I had the hockey hair, so it was like, and then I was trying to grow my hair out during my metal stage. My brother actually did grow his out. He had like the long old metal hair. I really didn't fully commit to it because I didn't have the patience. But I used to have a pretty good head of hair on me. Unfortunately, I just did all the wrong things with it.
Yeah, it's like you never know what you had until you lost it, right?
Yeah, it was, I look back at those pictures, I'm like, oh man,
yeah, all the things I would have done.
That was amazing. Unfortunate.
It's like James Newberry, who, right?
Yeah, exactly. The guy has majestic.
At what point, going through high school and then entering into college, at what point did you know you wanted to become a sportscaster?
The first time anybody ever suggested that to me was my sophomore year in high school, and it was after our homecoming rally when, as captain of the JV football team at the time, I was in charge of introducing the team, for whatever.
Yeah.
I can't even remember how we did it, but I remember at the time, I was a pretty quiet kid. I wasn't very outgoing. I wasn't very loud. I wasn't like a vocal leader, just kind of went and did my thing and tried to lead by example. And I remember that our coach was, I think, a little nervous about having me do this. And I ended up pulling it off, and he came up to me afterwards. He's like, hey, you did a great job. You ought to think about doing something in broadcasting with that. I went, all right, kind of never really thought about it again. And then it really wasn't until college when I started to think, okay, this might be something I want to do. I originally went to San Francisco State as a film major, wanted to get into the movie business. Very quickly found out that crew was not for me. Mm-hmm. And they had a casting class at San Francisco State, and I'd always loved sports and always loved, the idea of making movies. And I was a big fan of NFL films and the stuff that they were doing. And I thought, this might be a good way to kind of get involved in that. And that was sort of the first step that I took into the sportscasting world. And it originally was to sort of be behind the camera. I never really thought I'd be in front.
I think I went to school for radio and TV broadcasting, and I'm right there with you. It's always you want to go in and make the movies, you want to go in and make the films, and you start behind the camera because that's where they're going to put you, because you don't know anything better than to just pull focus and zoom in and zoom out. Right. And it's always one of those things where you're like, and then you always back out because it's like, this is too much.
So when you were going to college and for broadcasting, was the focus sports, or was it just general broadcasting and then you kind of found yourself into sports, or you knew back then that you wanted to do sports?
I knew I wanted to do sports, and that was the focus of it. That sportscasting class, I don't think it's there anymore, because back in the mid to late 90s when I was going there, obviously no internet, and San Francisco State was then a Division II school. Mm-hmm. They had no TV contract. None of their sports were put on television. What we would do is that if you're old enough to remember public access cable, we would put all of our sports on the local public access station.
Sure. Yep.
And it was cool because you could do in the class was great because you could, if you wanted to direct, you could direct. If you wanted to be a camera person, you could be a camera person. Exactly. If you wanted to call play-by-play, you could try that. And I remember just kind of tried the on-camera thing and doing play-by-play, and that was sort of my first foray into it. And I think that having watched sports my whole life, I had a rudimentary knowledge of what you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But I knew that at that point I just want to get into sports broadcasting. And it was still, local television at that point was bigger than it is now, and was still a pretty reliable source for sports information, especially for local teams. And, I got an internship at what was then Sports Channel Pacific, which is now NBC Sports Bay Area. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if it's in the same building, but anyway, they changed hands a couple times. Fox Sports Bay Area, and anyway. Intern there, was able to get some good experience and learn from some people, and it was all, hey, log these highlights, help edit this. In fact, I don't even think I did editing. It was just like logging and just trying, just helping out in general. And they let me use their studio to cut a studio segment for my resume tape, and that was cool, having that sort of high level of production for a resume tape, because entry level jobs, you're just trying to go wherever it will take you.
Right.
And so, I put a resume tape together and then started firing it out, and then found one station that said yes. And I was like, fine, I'll go. And I was in Kalispell, Montana. So that was my first job.
Wow. So at this point in college, and then obviously your first job, did you have, like in CrossFit, I have my favorite CrossFitter, Josh Bridges or Scott Panchik, right? Did you have a broadcaster that you really looked up to or aspired to be at that time?
It's a good question, because I think at that time, in the 90s, that's really when SportsCenter was starting to come into its own, and it was must-see TV. It was back in the days of like Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann and Kenny Mayne.
Kenny Mayne.
I thought that guy was hilarious. And so we all, he's fantastic. Yeah. So we all in our sportscasting class, that is what we tried to be. Mm-hmm. Didn't do it well, but it was that sort of tongue-in-cheek, be funny, and it's when you try to do it, you realize, those guys are actually really good, because it's hard to be funny. Mm-hmm. Very easy to fail at being funny. But it kind of gave us this. It's sort of the same way when you play music. You just sort of imitate the bands that you know until you find your own sound.
Exactly.
We were all trying to be, Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann and Kenny Mayne, and you have fun with it. And in doing that, we got we were able to sort of find our own voices. At least I was. But those are the guys that I think I really looked up to, because they made it fun. They did sports highlights unlike anybody had ever done them. But before those guys came along, you'd watch highlights, and it was all business. Not a lot of glitz, but it was just sort of all business. And they brought a comedic element to it and a fun element that had been missing. And I really liked that, because I was like, that's what it should be when people tune into any sort of broadcast.
You and I are actually the same age. So, I used to love watching like baseball this week, because I'm 47 and it was like baseball this week, and you'd get Johnny Bench on there. That was his golden days and stuff. And they would do like the bloopers with Ozzie Guillen and stuff. So I know exactly where you're coming from when you're talking about these are the people that you wanted to be in sportscasting. So that's amazing.
So you're getting your first job in Montana, right? And it's the first people that basically said yes, it sounds like. You probably had never even been to Montana. So talk a little bit more about the grind at the beginning of your career and all the things that you had to do. I mean, maybe side jobs or whatever, just to make ends meet. And then after that, I want to hear what was like that first big breakthrough, or like, this is my big chance moment for you.
So it's funny. Kalispell, you're right. I had no idea where Kalispell, Montana was. I didn't care. I was like, fine, they want to give me a job. They want to pay me to go do sports. I'll go do it. Fine. And I'll never forget, so growing up in Sacramento, California, it's a decent market. It's a city, you know, and I lived in the suburbs, and I'd been to small town America. My mom's from Burlington, Iowa, so that's small town. But I didn't realize like how small Kalispell was. So I would remember talking to the guy's name is Steve Fetveit, and I think he's retired now. But he's the guy who hired me. And he was giving me directions because I had to drive, and before Google Maps or anything. So the old days where you're writing out directions. And I remember him saying, okay, so you're going to you'll be on Highway 93 and then you on Main Street. All right. I go, okay. I go, well, what exit is Main Street for Main Street? Is it the Main Street exit? And he goes, no, Highway 93 just turns into Main Street. And I was like, what?
Just go straight. It'll turn into it sooner or later.
Never heard of that before. So I'll never forget I had this 93 Toyota Tercel loaded with everything that I owned. Really the first time that I'd left home, because when I went to college at San Francisco, it was only like a 90-minute drive to get home. In fact, I still played in the hockey league in Sacramento on Tuesday nights. I would make the drive, play, and come back home. It wasn't that, gas was cheap. It was fun. But yeah, I moved up there, and it was like, I lived in like this junky old apartment, because they paid me my first job paid me $14,000 a year, and I thought I was rich. I was like, oh my God, this is $14,000 a year. Are you kidding me? I'm just stealing money. And yeah, you get up there, and it's small. It's a small market. So I was the only guy in the sports department. There were a couple of our sister stations we worked with in Missoula and Bozeman, and we would get stuff from them to cover Montana State and Montana. But I covered 4 high schools. I covered Flathead, Columbia Falls, Whitefish, and Big Fork. Those are my 4 high schools that I covered. And I would go to, I'd go to the games, and I'd shoot them myself, and I'd do the highlights at night, and I would interview the coaches, and I'd interview the players. And it took me a while to kind of figure everything out and how it all worked, because it was very they chucked me into the deep end on air. I'm sitting at my desk, scared to death. Like, I don't know what's going on. Steve Fetveit, the guy who hired me, who's the news director, comes in. I'll never forget this. Leans over. He goes, so you ready? And I said, yeah. He goes, all right, good luck. And just left.
Oh, no.
Right. So yeah, it was a great experience though, because I learned how to shoot, learned how to edit, learned how to manage my schedule things out a week ahead of time. So I knew what I was running each day, and I got to cover some pretty crazy stories. There was one of my favorites that I covered was the ski resort up there in Whitefish is called Big Mountain, and at the end of the ski season, they used to have this thing called the downhill furniture race. By some furniture store, and these people would just get 3 sheets to the wind drunk, and they would put baby bassinets and couches on skis and run them down the hill, and they would always end in some glorious wreck. So that was fun. But awesome. it was just it was real small town America. I mean, I remember I had to drive to like Libby one time, or I had to drive to Idaho to cover some guy who caught like a world record rainbow trout. These were the stories that I was covering. And so I worked there. I got some great experience. And then I was able to get a job in Tallahassee, Florida, which I thought was awesome, because now I'm going to go cover Florida State. And this was in the Peter Warwick, Chris Winkie days when they're winning national championships and, walking out of public or Dillard's with free stuff. In fact, I was sitting like 3 feet from Peter Warwick when he made that famous comment. Not like I shot the president. That was
oh no!
Right in that room. Right. But that was cool. But really, I think when I felt like I got I was really in the game is when I got my job in Jacksonville, because they at the time had an NFL franchise, and it was a dream to cover one of those. They still covered big time Florida college, University of Florida's huge down there. Still covered Florida State, Georgia as well. They had the PGA Tour event in the Players Championship in their backyard in Ponte Vedra. The Daytona 500 was something I got to cover. In fact, total aside, my first Daytona 500 was when Dale Earnhardt was killed.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that was my introduction to that event. But that was Jacksonville when I felt like, okay, now I am in the I don't want to call it the big leagues, but at least I'm around major league sports.
So what was it like coming from Montana, though? So straight to Tallahassee?
It was interesting. It was I felt like I was going from nowhere America to downtown Manhattan. Like that's how small. And Tallahassee's not big; it's a college town,
Right.
But it was definitely a change because it was again it was like getting thrown right into the deep end. I remember I moved down there with a guy. They were looking for actually an entirely new sports department because both their weekend and main anchors were leaving. So I got the main job. And then the guy who was the sports anchor at our sister station in Bozeman, who had attended Florida State, ended up getting hired as the weekend guy. So that was cool that I had someone to move down there with and establish ourselves. But, they just dumped all this stuff on us. It's like, yeah, we got these hour shows we're doing for Florida State. We need you guys to produce those. We had never done that.
Oh, wow.
I remember we got an apartment together and my furniture hadn't arrived. We had no furniture and we had like Seth, the guy I was working with, had his golf clubs, and so we were just chipping balls into a coffee cup to entertain ourselves, trying to figure out how we were going to do these shows and sleeping on air mattresses and stuff. But it was a great experience because, again, I got to cover big time college sports, and I had to figure it out on my own.
That's amazing. So I have a question. So when you were in Montana and you're covering these 4 high schools and you're driving to Idaho to cover, this big fish catch, you're covering this furniture downhill ski event or whatever, was there ever a point where you're like, what am I doing? Is this the route I really want to go into? Or was it always like, this is what I'm doing, these are my goals, I'm going to stick to it?
Yeah, there was definitely moments like that. And a lot of it was because I had friends who were the same age who were, pretty successful in what they were doing and making a lot more money than I was. And my brother, for example, was involved in video games and is a software engineer and has worked for like Nintendo and EA Sports and Sony and those guys. And so he was 2 years younger than me, driving a brand new Mustang, traveling all over the world. And so it was tough for me to see that and be like, oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing with my life. And yeah, there were times where I was like, what am I doing? Do I really want to do this? But I just felt like if I just stuck with it, I'd be okay. I really didn't have a plan other than just like, all right, I'm going to see what's next.
Right.
But there were absolutely times when I was like, this is for me. It's like, I'll never forget one day it was minus 18 with a high of 1.
Oh no. Yep.
And I'm like, from California, this is not something I do. And I just sit in my car freezing my ass off going, what am I doing here?
Right.
Come on, heat in. But yeah, there were absolutely times where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
So you've seen it grow. What is your opinion of high school sports now being broadcast on ESPN? I mean, both of us at one point saw, like you said, high school on local channel, and now you've got high school football on ESPN. We got a high school here called Burns High School. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they were one of the big high schools that kind of sort of ESPN picked up, and then it kind of just went off from there. And so now you've got high school football on ESPN.
Yeah, that was something I never thought I was going to see. But when I moved to the South, when I moved to Florida, and I saw how big college football is in that area, and people who aren't from there don't really get it.
That's true.
Living on the West Coast, out here, it's NFL is usually the biggest thing. There are some college fans here, but it is not a religion like it is in the South. People just don't. Unless you've lived there, I don't think you fully get what the passion is in that area of the country for college football. But once I moved there and I saw like not only the passion around college football, but signing day and how popular that was, it does make sense that is the next logical step. And when you have these 24-hour sports networks that are looking for programming, football is king. Everyone watches football. Like football is must-see TV.
Yeah, you got to feed the monster.
Especially, I mean, outside of football season, maybe. But, I mean, if you had high school on Friday, college on Saturday, and pros on Sunday, you'll watch that. I'll football, especially if it's between two big schools. And these are the future stars in the NFL. I mean, I remember watching Tim Tebow play in high school.
Yeah.
And so and I remember them being on ESPN because he was such a draw. But it doesn't shock me because there's such a love and demand for it, and people who are so into college football love to see who's the next 5-star recruit, who's going to get this kid. Oh, that kid's committed to my school. I want to watch him, and I want to watch him play high school. So, yeah, it doesn't shock me that is the natural evolution of where this thing has gone. And with all now the platforms available, just not only broadcast, but also streaming, they got to fill it somehow.
Yeah,
True.
Absolutely.
True.
All right. So at what point, what year are we in right now as far as you're in Tallahassee or Jacksonville? And
Jacksonville, I started in 2000, and I worked there in TV in 2009. I didn't get back to California until 2010.
Okay, so Kevin found this somewhere in your bio. I don't know where he found all these things about you, but he said that according to your bio, you found CrossFit in 2007. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
All right, so how did you find that? Is that something that, were you working out a lot and you were like, I wanted to try something different and I saw this online, or how did that unfold?
Were you and Mark Hutchinson's good friends at that point because he's out of Jacksonville?
No, so it was, yeah, David, it's like you said, it was like I had been doing the normal sort of workouts that everyone did. Monday is chest, Tuesday is, back and arms, and Wednesday's shoulders, and Thursday's legs, and then Friday, that was my thing. And then my big cardio workout was playing hockey a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with a guy in the sports department at WJ, whose wife was a personal trainer, and she worked at a local gym that was really close to our TV station. And Matt is this guy's name. We were talking about about just wanting to find something different. He said, you should check out this thing called CrossFit. He's like, Melissa, his wife, has actually started using it with some of her clients. I said, okay, well, what is it? He goes, well, it's like this website. You go to CrossFit.com and they put a workout of the day up and you just do that. Mm-hmm. And I went, all right. So I checked it out, and it was, the old website.
Yep.
And I think the workout I saw was something that looked pretty, simple, like 5 sets of 5 push press, something like that.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that doesn't look like it's going to get me into shape. So kind of blew it off. And then finally I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And I signed up for some personal training sessions. And again, Melissa she didn't have an L1, but she was a good enough coach to where she knew the movements. She knew how to coach them. And I went in there, and I'll never forget, she taught me how to squat. Like, I'd never really learned how to squat before. Taught me a rudimentary kipping pull-up. And she said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just do 10 rounds of this workout. Cindy.
Okay.
Okay, great. Yep.
Just 10 rounds. We're just going to do 10 rounds. And it almost killed me. I was going through it going like, how, this is impossible. How does anybody do this? There's no way human beings are meant to work out like this. And I was hooked from that moment, because I realized that I had been everything in fitness wrong up until that point. And like most people who get involved in it, I just threw myself into everything CrossFit. I looked it up online. I tried to watch all the videos I could. I tried to surround myself with people who knew more about it than I did. Like, oh, teach me how to do this, and how do I clean better? What's a snatch again? But just could not stop learning about it, because I realized that finally I have something that is going to get me at a level of fitness that I've always wanted to have. And
so how long did it take you to finally realize that you weren't going to go to the games in your first year?
Well, yeah, like, it's pretty funny. It was definitely my first year, because that was the first year of the games. And I remember at that gym I worked out at, they had the original games flyer.
Nice.
Because a lot of people there were doing it. But it wasn't, I think it was once I started kind of actually going to dropping in at some of the first CrossFit gyms in Jacksonville and seeing some of the fire breathers that they had, I was like, oh, okay.
There's some real talent.
I just think we've talked about this before, but I just kind of sort of think that the first 3 months that anybody starts doing CrossFit, they look at it and they think, I can do this. And then they get into it and they're like, no, I can't do this.
Right. Or you've been going to the 6 a.m. class for the first couple months, and then you go to the 4 o'clock class and you're like, oh, where did these dudes come from?
Oh, yes. This is a whole different group of people.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I remember watching Jason Khalipa one time. He was in a hotel and he was doing dumbbell thrusters. And they were like, you got to watch this, you got to watch this, you got to watch this. And I'm like, I watch it. I was like, okay, this is great. This is wonderful. But he did it so efficiently, and he's eating donuts afterwards. And then another one was he was actually out on the boardwalk, and they challenged somebody, how many thrusters can you do in so much time? And he was like, and he beat him again. And I knew then and there, I was like, they're on another level, like you say. It's like, I've watched them work. I've been to Mayhem when Ron was around, and he still is, but you watch those people and it's amazing. It's like, it really is their job. They take the time, they work out, they'll rest, they'll recover, and they work out again, they work out again. And it's like, how do you do this?
Yeah. I remember watching Khalipa when I didn't do the Open officially in 2011 because I still wasn't going to a CrossFit. I was living in California at the time, but I wanted to do the workouts. So I did that first one. It was the snatches and the double unders, like 10 snatches and 30 double unders, I think, for however many long minutes. But I remember watching Khalipa do it, and then I went and did it. And again, I was in a Globo gym with, you know, plates you couldn't drop and this thick old jump rope that not made for double unders. But I remember doing that going, how the hell did Khalipa get that score? I'm gassed. That was really the first time I was like, oh, yeah, these guys are absolutely in a different stratosphere.
So when you started CrossFit, you said that was the year of the first CrossFit Games. And you said you had a brochure in that gym, and you probably watched it maybe online.
Actually,
was it even broadcasted online?
No, I think they had like a website that I think you could follow.
Okay.
All along.
So at what point, when, you know, after starting CrossFit and realizing there's a CrossFit Games, at what point did you see this as like a possible outlet for broadcasting?
So in 2008, just to give you the background, when the economy tanked, I had been in my current job in Jacksonville as the weekend sports anchor for 8 years, and they were paying me more than they ever wanted to pay that position, just by virtue of the fact that I had been there for so long. So they didn't renew my contract. Ended up, you know, getting into the world of PR and marketing, worked for a company in Jacksonville for about a year, and then through a confluence of events, I was able to move back home to Sacramento and work for another PR and marketing company. And I went to the games as a fan in 2011 because it was still in Carson. So that's I could drive 6 hours and be there. Went as a fan, went with my old college roommate. We reconnected through CrossFit, but we went to the games together. His name's Brandon. And I remember the Killer Cage event. And here's the first part of this. We're walking to our seats, and I don't know if you guys have ever been to the StubHub Center, but the broadcast booth at the tennis stadium, I think, was in the south end. So we're walking on the concourse by the broadcast booth. And at the time, my friend Brandon had been going to Bill Grundler's gym, CrossFit Inferno. So Bill comes walking out of the broadcast booth while we are walking by, stops and says hi to Brandon.
Yep.
I have no idea who this guy is. He has no idea who I am. Brandon introduces us, and I said hi, talk for a quick second, and that was it. So that was the first time I met Bill Grundler.
That's amazing.
We proceed to our seats. We go down, and we sit in like the lower bowl. Stage events getting ready. Looking around, and there's a spider camera. And it's like, what, are they broadcasting this? And then I looked on the floor, and Miranda Oldroyd and Rory McKernan, I think, were sitting on top of the Killer Cage, and they both had ESPN mic flags. And that's the minute I went, holy crap, I need to look into this.
Yes.
So I saw that, and I went back home and immediately fired off a random email to media@CrossFit.com, told them who I was, told them my experience. And I was still sort of freelancing every now and then for, like Comcast Sports Bay Area and covering some, college stuff and some A's baseball, but it wasn't a whole lot, but I was still keeping a toe in it. But then when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is a good fit. I need to figure out how to get into this.
So you're going from Jacksonville, Florida, where the media team for that station is probably top notch. It's like a very greased old machine running very well, and then you get your foot into CrossFit Media. What was it like stepping into CrossFit Media? Which, I mean, basically CrossFit back then was a startup small business, essentially.
So the first time I really did anything for them was Regionals 2012. And Rory McKernan had originally called me to help out with the broadcast that they were going to do at Middle East Regional in 2012, because they were going to use that as a warm-up for the games that same year, because they were going to put it on ESPN. So I said yes, but before I did that, I agreed to drive to Scotts Valley every week, about 2.5 hours from where I lived in Sacramento, and help them with their regionals coverage, which was basically voicing and cutting highlight videos of every heat of every event. It was nuts, like the stuff that they put out. And I remember my girlfriend, now my wife at the time, went with me a couple times, and I came back to the hotel one night and I said, "These no idea what they're doing." She's like, "Why don't you say something?" I go, "I'm not going to open my mouth and ruin. I'm, squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'm just going to ride this thing out and see what happens." But then they admitted. I remember talking to Tony Budding we used to say, we used to succeed in spite of ourselves. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And they just succeeded because of effort. You know, they just threw themselves into it and did what they thought was right. But from a broadcast standpoint and understanding how to put a show together and, you know, how to sort of mirror what was being done with other sports to make it look like something that people are used to, so they can, you know, relate to it. They had no clue, but they worked really hard.
Yeah. So at what point did you feel like, I mean, were you ever to the point where you stepped in and kind of gave them your opinion and 2 cents on how things should be ran? Or
I made a suggestion one time, and it was when we were actually in Columbus doing Central East Regional. And I forget what it was, but they were trying to figure out how to shoot recap thing. And I can't remember what it was, but I said, hey, why don't you do it this way? And I remember one of the managing producers went, that's actually a really good idea. We should do that. And I just shut up. I think they ended up doing it. But then, yeah, I think slowly but surely kind of worked my way into, you know, the trust tree, the circle of trust.
Yeah, sure.
But that was the first time I really ever opened my mouth. But I've learned throughout my career, like when you first show up someplace, just shut up and listen. You know, don't be that guy. Because I had some experiences being on the other side of that with CrossFit, where you'd bring someone new and the person knew everything. It was like, this is not working. Like,
right.
You're not ingratiating yourself well to these people.
Right.
So when you first started broadcasting with CrossFit, was there ever a time that you were just kind of starstruck by the athletes, like say Rich Froning or Jason Khalipa, when you first met him for the first time?
I don't know if it was starstruck, but it was certainly just in awe of everything that they could do. I think I'll take that back. I think there was a time where, Rich Froning, I think I was really intimidated by because of everything the guy had done. There was a time really early on when I got hired on full time in 2013 at CrossFit, where I think it was like my first month, and it may have been close to my birthday, where Rich was in the office working out with a bunch of athletes. I think Austin Stack was there. I think Khalipa may have been there, but there were some pretty big name athletes. And I was kind of like, oh my God, this is Rich Froning working out in front of me. This is unbelievable. I can't believe I'm actually standing here. But that was probably the first time and only time, because what was cool about it is that given the amount of access that we had to the athletes, you find out really fast just how nice everybody in the community is.
Yes.
I haven't had an experience with any of the athletes, really. I mean, they're all super cool, super accessible, and just as nice as can be, always willing to give you their time, where that is not the case that I found with other sports. You know, like in the NFL, when I covered the Jaguars, there were some really good guys on that team, but there were also some real just dudes that were like, man, this guy is a jerk.
Do you think that has something to do with, like, these football players? They grew up basically in stardom. Like, we know from a very young age what kid is going to get somewhere. Usually by like 8th grade, we know. And they get special treatment. We all know that. So they're used to that. Whereas in CrossFit, this was just a very new. These guys weren't used to being stars. This is barely a sport yet, you know. You think that might play into it a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of these guys were, you know, they didn't have, they got into it later. They didn't have that I'm special feeling that, like you just said, was told to them throughout their lives. And, you know, they weren't prima donnas, and they weren't like, there was really not a lot of money in the sport either.
Right.
So there wasn't that aspect of it. And, you know, I think a lot of times NFL players can be super guarded and super sort of jaded because they think that everybody who tries to get their attention wants money.
Right.
I can kind of sort of answer it on my end as well. When we interviewed Jen Jones, you know, out of Texas, she always told us, she's like, this is really new to me. You know, this wasn't anything that I ever expected to be the way it is.
Right.
So a lot of the athletes that I came across and that I know are just down to earth people, because where I come from, all the people will say, well, what were they like when you go to their gym? And I would look at it and be like, well, I can point this person at this gym and you're just like that person at their gym. They're just like everybody else when it comes down to it.
Really good point.
Hey guys, we're going to take a break to thank our sponsors for today's episode. We're going to start off with CrossFit Greer. If you're living in the Greer area and are interested in getting started in CrossFit, go ahead and look up CrossFit Greer. Jen and Reagan Green are the owners there. If you mention the Apogee Podcast to them, they will give you 10% off your first month's membership fees.
I would also like to thank Blitz Belts and Chris Kane for their continued support of the show. So be sure to use their 15% off coupon code at checkout. That's Apogee, all caps. That gets you, the listener, 15% off at checkout at Blitz Belts on your custom order. I want to thank GoTape for being our new sponsor. GoTape has committed its brand to providing the best in athletic tape. They are the standard for CrossFit tape, scary sticky. Now they are providing the best in KT tape. So at checkout, be sure to get your 25% off your wholesale purchase. Use the coupon code Apogee at checkout.
Finally, if you guys would like to become an invested friend of the show and are interested in supporting the show directly, go to anchor.fm/Apogee Podcast and click on the support tab. We love bringing you guys awesome content each week, so be sure to subscribe to the podcast, drop a review, and let us know how we're doing. Let's talk a little bit more about early career. What do you wish you would have known in your early career when you first started out that would help you today?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I heard a quote the other day that I really thought was good, and it was have less of a plan. And I think someone told me, like, it's okay to not have point A to point B totally mapped out. Just get to point A and take the next step and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of like, when I first started in broadcasting, I really had this idea in my head of how everything was going to work and the exact steps I was going to take. And that was maybe, I don't know if it held me back, but it would have been nice to know that hey man, it's okay. Like, if something doesn't go right here, you don't know what next. And then I think the other thing would be is, like, don't be afraid to get uncomfortable, because anytime that I've made strides in my career or gotten to the next level in something, it's because I've been willing to step out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy, especially when I look back in broadcasting of the way that industry is. Like, you find a situation like I did in Jacksonville, which is a great situation, fantastic sports department, worked with a great team. And I was told that, one day you'll be the sports director here. Well, to me, that was like comfort. I can stay here. I can get used to this. I don't have to move around anymore. And had I maybe been a little more ambitious and been more willing to be like, I'm going to get out of this comfort zone. I want to go challenge myself again. Who knows what would happen? But then again, I don't think it leads me to where I am today. So I think it would be, don't be afraid to not have a plan, and just don't be afraid to be uncomfortable.
So with that being said, when CrossFit HQ dismissed the media team, did you ever have thoughts of, like, moving on from CrossFit Media and starting a new chapter in a different sporting avenue, or what kept you motivated to stay in the CrossFit space?
I absolutely, I remember thinking, all right, well, I'm a little old for it, but I can go to the Fire Academy. That was like my backup plan. This is the second time now in my career that I've been, let go from a broadcasting job. I looked into trying to get my foot into some other doors as far as other sports, but nothing ever really seemed to materialize. That was promising. I got to do some stuff for USA Climbing, which was great for ESPN. I'm actually doing some more stuff tomorrow for them.
Oh, awesome.
So that's a fun little side gig for me to do in a different sport. But I would have loved to have found a way. I was thinking, like, how can I get into hockey, and how can I get into college sports? And it's so hard now because those jobs just don't come available. It's kind of hard to get your foot in the door, especially for me when I'm as old as I am, in my 40s. Like, they're not looking for someone who has that like level of experience. It's to find a job that matches those qualifications is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like your entry level thing. But there's two people I really credit for keeping me on track. The first is my wife, because she said to me when I was thinking about just going and getting a job, she said, look, don't do that. She goes, I don't want you to go get a job where you're going to be miserable and you're going to be not fun to deal with when you come home. See what happens because at the time I was working with Rogue doing some stuff. She's like, see what happens with the freelance stuff. Take your time. We're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Don't rush into anything. And then the other person is Tommy Marquez, because really the one who had always wanted to do a podcast.
Okay.
And he and I started talking about that, and he was one of the driving forces behind it to make that happen. And had it not been for those two, I could see myself like doing something else right now, probably.
Sure,
that kind of sort of leads into the next question, was who was the idea for the podcast? But obviously you've said it's Tommy's idea. So what was your expectations of the podcast when he brought it to you?
I think so. Tommy had wanted to do it for a long time. He wanted to do one while we were working at CrossFit, and it just always got down. They never wanted to do it, and then Devon started doing his thing, and so then that kind of took care of that. But the whole reason we started to do it is because at the time we got let go. So Tommy left in October of 2018. I stayed on for a couple of more months just because I had agreed to help them finish the post-production shows that they had to deliver for CBS Sports. And then my last day was like December 1st. I was out. But Tommy had been noodling on it. And at the time, too, just to sort of set the stage, IMG, the company that the UFC, was in serious negotiations to take over the broadcast and content creation surrounding the CrossFit Games in this season. And they had been speaking to me about coming on board. They had been talking to Tommy. But the deal just kept getting kicked down the road. I kept getting calls from them saying, hey, just want to give you an update. We're close. We're just dealing with all the lawyers and stuff. We'd love to have you on board. Here's sort of the idea. So as that continued, after we were let go, Tommy and I were trying to find a way to stay relevant so that when they did get the deal done and things did get started to get put back together, we would be top of mind and they would want to keep us involved. And we toyed with some other stuff. We tried to figure out how could we do a studio show, and we actually tried to pull that off briefly with the Inside Elite Fitness thing that we did, but the resources just were not there, and the time commitment was too much for people to do it for free. Right. So that didn't last very long. But we did figure out that why don't we do a podcast? We've always wanted to do one. It's very little overhead. We don't need a bunch of stuff. We can scrounge some stuff up and make it work. And I said, all right, cool. So really it was never something that was supposed to be like a long-term thing or even what was now like a business. It was just supposed to be a way for us to stay relevant so that when things got going again, we would be sort of top of mind and we could get back involved in a more official capacity.
I've always made this statement as far as CrossFit goes, is that it's made more entrepreneurs out of it than they would have ever thought. I mean, because I know that when they fired the media team, from my understanding, and you said it too on your podcast, that there was still money on the table, that CBS and all these other major networks were wanting to come in and do it. So it wasn't a lack that there wasn't money. It's just that, and that's why I say it's always been, CrossFit has made more entrepreneurs out of that one sport. Like you harken back to NFL films. That's kind of sort of how I look at what's going on now. Yeah. Is like somebody takes the mantle, they go in there, they do the films. You've got the Buttery Bros are doing that kind of sort of thing. You guys, Tommy Marquez, are doing your own podcasting, broadcasting thing. So it's always been a great, kind of incubator for people who has the mind and thought to do it.
Mm-hmm. So going off of that whole entrepreneurship thing, that was kind of like the second part of this question. What was it like going from being an employee to being self-employed entrepreneur and all the responsibilities that go along with entrepreneurship?
It was, it was crazy. It was scary because you just like learn on the fly, which is kind of what I've been used to doing. When we first started the podcast, we thought, okay, maybe we can get a sponsor and we can get a little cash here and there to float us as we kind of bounce between jobs. Tommy at the time was still working for Morning Chalk Up, and he still is. Mm-hmm. And I had some freelance stuff that I was doing, various outlets that was bringing in a little bit of money. And we thought, oh, maybe we can get a sponsor and get some swag. That might be kind of cool. And it really wasn't until probably the games of 2019 where things kind of started to take off for us. We had more sponsors wanting to get on board, and then I was like, oh man, I got to keep a budget here. We need to start keeping track of this stuff. And so like there was budget stuff, and then there's like tax stuff you got to worry about. Right. And it's, Tommy, again, he was the visionary behind it. He wanted to sell merchandise. I'm like, no one's going to, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to spend money on people are going to buy shirts for us. Like, that's, maybe we sell a couple to some friends, but nah, we sold merchandise, and it's like, you just learn how to do it. And we've been lucky to be surrounded. And Kevin, this goes back to what you were talking about, like creating entrepreneurs. Like there were people in the space who had experience doing this, who sort of helped us out. Ken, the guy who helps us run our merchandising stuff, had been doing stuff in that space and gave us a great deal and helps us out. So that was cool to have him on board. But it became sort of this thing where we would goof around every week, and not really goof around. We were trying to put out serious content. We were trying to have fun doing it, to where it's like, all right, now we have sponsor obligations, and we owe this person this show, and we have to make sure we get this read done, and we have to make sure this sponsor's happy. And we have awesome sponsors who are great to deal with, so no complaints there. But you do need to deliver for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it puts that pressure on you a little bit. But yeah, it's been weird, because there's just some things that I never thought I would be doing that I'm doing now, like budgets and trying to figure out taxes, and trying to project like what can we get, like if we need new cameras for the studio, can we do that? If we need some new hardware, how do we make that happen? But it's definitely been a good learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are your long-term goals going forward with all this?
That's a good question. Going back to my theme of not really having too much of a plan, I want to continue to do the podcast with Tommy. I think the two of us are committed to making this work as long as we can. And then I also am really happy to be part of the Hamilton Road Productions team, which is the team that CrossFit is now hired to do all of their media production. Okay. So everything you see, like Game Central and the Triplet and the Chipper and the Open announcements, and some of like the other videos that are coming out, features, they're the company that CrossFit hired to do that. And it's essentially all the old people that used to work at CrossFit.
Right.
Cool. The same crew that I used to work with, plus some news people who are awesome. So my goal is to make sure that we grow this thing and get it back, not only to where it was in 2018 before the plug got pulled, but hopefully bigger as we move on into the years to come, after we get over COVID and we're able to sort of really get on some calm waters and get the ship going in the right direction, which it is now. It's just,
right.
Unfortunately, COVID has thrown a big wrench into a lot of stuff.
I was going to ask you that because I shot they moved the Maui tournament to Asheville, North Carolina, of course.
Yeah.
The announcements I watched, it was very different this year. It's very starkly different because they weren't in a gym. It's just he's looking at a camera. How did that come across to you? I mean, you got to bring that energy. How did that come across to you?
Yeah, from where I was sitting, I thought they came across pretty well. It was difficult to bring that energy when there's no fans and there's no crowd, because that was the cool thing about the old Open announcements that the few I would get to go to, is that you'd have that crowd there that was super pumped to have you in town. They were all cheering their heads off. You talked to them beforehand and everybody was super nice, and it was very easy to fall into that that excited kind of mode. But when you're in the studio where we were, and we were in the gym at the CrossFit building in Scotts Valley, which is right outside of Santa Cruz, it's super quiet in there. Yeah, and there were some people here and there sort of watching, but they would say, "All right, we're on in 30 seconds," and everybody would shut up, and you could hear a pin drop.
So it was more studio then. It was very quiet.
Absolutely more studio. And then then the athletes would do their thing, and it was just, you don't hear the crowd. And it was the same thing at the games for the live portion of it. It was super quiet. And not having that energy, it is much different. And I imagine it's what a lot of broadcasters who do, the NHL and the NBA are going through right now, where you have these empty arenas and you have to, kind of bring that energy. That I think hope is that the people at home were able to watch it and had a good time doing so.
I loved it.
I just really felt bad for Dave, because it's like, to me, Dave thrives on the crowd. And so when he says 3, 2, 1, go, he's got that air of like surprise about him. But when that crowd is not there, it just kind of, in my opinion, I felt bad for him. I kind of maybe felt like some of it, he was deflated. It's like, I'm thankful you guys didn't put like fake crowd noise in there.
We had the fan wall, which I thought
that was good. Cool. That was really good.
That was fun. Like I would watch their reactions as Dave was announcing the workouts. That was kind of fun to do. But yeah, you're right. I think that he definitely he's such a good bad guy.
Oh, he is.
Oh, dude.
And people have a love-hate relationship.
That's the thing. It wouldn't be
hard to imagine anybody doing it.
Exactly. It wouldn't be the same if Dave wasn't there. As much as people hate on him, we all love him. And
we all love him.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
What do you think about this new CrossFit season layout? Do you think this will be like a permanent solution, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I like the fact that it mirrors the old season, and it mirrors the sort of season that you see in other sports. And that was the biggest problem I had with 2019 and 2020, the way that was laid out, is that you couldn't easily explain it to somebody.
Right.
It really didn't follow that sort of funnel where it's you start wide and then you pare down the field, where you have, regular season, everyone plays, playoffs, few teams play, championship.
Yes.
And we needed to get back to something like that. There's some things that I would change. I'm not wild about the non-standard programming in semifinals and I think it's just me being obsessive compulsive and loving at the end of the season to lay out the leaderboard and see, all right, everybody did the same tests and we know without a doubt that this person did the best among everybody. I understand why they did it, because I think you still need to allow these semifinal events to sort of keep a sense of individuality, a little bit, so they can be unique. They can show off maybe some of their locales. So I get that. I love the fact, though, that we're back to, open. I love the addition of the quarterfinals, and I think that can evolve into something really cool as we move on. But I think it's great for people who they're not at the semifinal level yet, but they might aspire. They want to aspire to get there. I thought the quarter good taste of like, okay, if you really want to compete level, this is what it's going to take. And that's another thing I think with the system that we've been operating under in 2019 and 2020 is that hollowed out the middle, that there were people in the of regionals who just wanted to get to regionals. Like, I just want to go compete at regionals. That'd be so awesome. And then there were no more opportunities for them. Now you could argue, you could go compete at a sanctioned event. Well, if there's not one really close to you, it's going to be kind of hard to do. It costs a lot more money. It's hard for your gym to go with you. Whereas regionals was relatively easy for people you knew to get to, because you were somewhat close to where you were competing. But I like the fact that we've given more opportunities for people to compete. I think those are great. I love that. I love going to the semifinals and again, having those in a compacted period of time. So within a month, because I think it's very easy to oversaturate with this. And that's what the sanction events did. It was like every week there was an event, and it's hard to get up for that and to be excited, but to have this within like 4 weeks where you have multiple competitions per weekend, you're 3 days, you're watching everything that's going on. And at the end, you know exactly who's advancing to the games. I think that's great. Right. I love the last chance qualifier, because I think a lot of things that people used to complain about was, well, this guy had a bad day and one event cost him a spot and now he can't go to the games. And the 6th place person in this, in this regional was much better than the 2nd place person in this regional. So why can't this guy go? And now I think that helps blunt a little bit of that argument to give, all right, if you had one bad event, or maybe you showed up and you were injured and you finished just outside, you got another shot. So I like that. It's kind of like a wild card, but you got to earn it. Yeah. And, I'm encouraged. I want to do at the games. Like I don't, everything I've ever heard, it's not like they're trying to contract the games anymore. They want to expand everything. It's not like we're just going to expand the individuals and leave the teams and the masters and the age groups where they are. No, we want to expand everything. So there are a lot of encouraging things, and it's unfortunate that COVID has prevented, I think, this season from really taking the shape that it was supposed to. Right. But you can definitely see the workings of something really good there.
I like the idea of sanctionals. I was always a big fan of the idea for that. Like you said, if somebody had a bad day, they could go out and do a sanctional, because my thought was, how NASCAR is a point situation. You can go race these races and get in. And I was always a very big proponent for a point system, but I never knew how to go about doing that, saying, hey, if you go up here to North New York, or you go down here to Wadapalooza, or you go over here to the Granite Games or whatever, that could be like a point system. And they're doing that now, so, I like that aspect of it as well.
Yeah,
I like the fact too, they're kind of getting the community still involved with it, and the events that are being run are, basically have sprung out of the community, like the Mid-Atlantic CrossFit Challenge that's going to happen in Knoxville. That's one that used to just be a local competition, and those guys have run it for years. And they do a fantastic job. And I love the fact that there's going to be some sort of, for lack of a better term, off-season competitive schedule where you have, the Rogue Invitational, and you have Wadapalooza, and you have Dubai, and maybe some of these other events that it's just about, let's go compete and see who can win some money. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch too.
What do you think it's going to take for CrossFit to really legitimize as a professional sport where these guys are making what professional athletes should make? I mean, you look at the PGA Tour, and those folks have their pro card, right? And they earn that pro card. Do you think that's something that CrossFit could kind of adapt at some point?
I know that idea has been kicked around throughout the years about, well, what if can we earn some kind of pro card? But I think, before you even get to that, I think, CrossFit is really now in its second, at least the games are in its second infancy, because everything got built up to 2018 and that everything got torn down.
Yep.
And now they're building again from scratch. They're a little bit farther ahead than they were, back in 2011, because, you have networks that are interested. But I think the first thing that needs to happen is just got to be some consistency. There has to be a season that people understand, that stays consistent year to year. Now, it might scale a little bit depending on participation in the Open, and that's fine. But the overall structure stay the same. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing I think is more sponsors and more money needs to get involved, and not just traditional CrossFit sponsors, but sponsors like Dodge. They were involved in the Open announcements. Sponsors that are non-traditional CrossFit companies that see this as a market they want to get into and they want to advertise to, because if you can get that, you can widen the prize pool. And Tommy and I talked about this the other day. I think if you're really going to provide more of an opportunity for athletes to make a living, you can't keep throwing prize money at the top three at the games, at least. You have to start giving it to people in the middle. And the example I used is, like, if you finish 10th at the Masters, you're walking home with a really good payday.
Yes.
Like, if you finish 10th at the CrossFit Games, you should walk home with a pretty good payday because you're the 10th fittest person on the planet. Like that, So I think that after the consistency and then you get the money involved, you need to start focusing less on the prize money you give to the top 2 or 3 and focus more on what you're giving to people in the middle. And then I think you'll see the start of something come than it is now. But you look at all these other leagues; they've been around for 100 years, and they have,
and we're playing catch up.
And it will take time. And then I think they need to be careful to not go too big too fast, because more is not better. Better is better. I think season, for example, the NFL. 16 games was fine with me. As much as I love the NFL, I don't know why you needed to add a 17th game. That's almost too much. 16 is great. And I love football, but I just want better. I don't want more. And I think they need to resist the temptation of just saturating the market with all these events that not even your hardcore fans are going to watch.
Right.
And trying to find that sweet spot.
What I think is amazing, and I hope this comes across, I keep watching Ken Burns' baseball, and the whole history of that is that literally we are somewhat on a precipice. We're getting ready to turn over our first great generation of CrossFit athletes. They're going into I'm not saying they're twilight, but I mean, you've got Rich Froning, you've got Jason Khalipa, those were the standard bearers for so long. And now you've got Matt Frazier, who is now retired. You have Tia Toomey. She hasn't said, she's obviously doing the Open, but now you're going to have this turnover. Like, who are going to be your next big athletes to keep it relevant? And I hope that we can recognize as athletes, as spectators, as fans, as podcast people, that's where we are. We're turning the cusp. I mean, we're talking 20 years from now, we're going to have the first edition of CrossFit Hall of Fame. What is your kind of idea on that?
No, I think you bring up a very good point, and what I think is really cool is that not only are we turning over the first generations, all the athletes you mentioned, we are welcoming in this generation of kids who have been doing this now since they were like 12.
Yes,
and that's something we have not seen. Like, I started when I was 33. Rich Froning and those athletes, they started in their 20s. Now you're seeing athletes like, look what Mal O'Brien, Emma Carey did. And they're 16 and 17 years old, and they're coming into this sport with more experience than like Carey Pierce has right now.
Right.
And that's scary. Like,
it is.
But they're going to be able to do. Like, can you imagine if someone taught you how to snatch when you were 11?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. I mean, muscle memory and any type of, when you're learning anything as a child, it's something you can pick up and you're going to know how to do that forever as long as you keep doing it. And if you can learn that muscle memory and that movement pattern as a kid, it's just, the sky is the limit. It's amazing. We have we're a physical therapy clinic here, and one of our employees, Jackson, he's been doing CrossFit since he was 13 years old. And the man, for the 4-rep front squat, gets 381 as a 20-year-old. It's just like, it's amazing because he's been doing it since he was 12, 13 years old, He can throw up a power snatch 270, no problem. Like, it's just amazing.
I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Oh, No, go ahead, Kevin. I want to hear yourself.
No, I always go back to Noah Olson's story. He told him he's volunteering at regional and stuff. He goes, one day I'm going to be here. But if you think about Noah Olson now, he's kind of sort of in the middle of his career. I'm saying he's not done, but that's amazing how much we've had as far as athletes that can do these things and how far it has come. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think too, to grow the popularity, CrossFit needs to do a much better job. And Brooks liked this when we talked to him, the former NHL player, to do a better marketing their athletes. You can't go on to CrossFit.com and go to the store and buy, a Rich Froning jersey or Catherine David's daughter jersey or a Tia Toomey. Like, you can't do that, and that's hopefully that is something that they're thinking about.
They tried it one time. They actually tried it one time, and through Reebok, and I never got the shirt. Never got the shirt. I bought it, never got the shirt.
Man.
You're right. You can't go out and buy like a leader's jersey or the white shirt. So,
all right. Well, let's turn the chapter a little bit here. We coming down to the kind of the fourth quarter. How is success in your business venture, with the podcast, correlated with your relationship with your friends and family, and even your own fitness level? Like, when you went out on your own, do you feel like that impacted your relationships and also your fitness level? I know at CrossFit HQ, you guys all worked out together all the time, and then all of a sudden that's gone. What happened there? And then also you have a son, so throw that in the mix.
I think the fitness question is interesting because it was very easy, and I definitely fell into this trap. When you were with that crew that I was with at CrossFit, they're all super fit, and they're all they all work out all the time. And I certainly fell into maybe being a little more obsessive about it than I needed to be, and maybe not training smarter. And I think I'm training smarter now. When I got removed from that element, I realized that, look, I'm not going to be a competitor. I'm not a competitor. Why am I killing myself like this so I can finish, 75th thousandth in the open or whatever it is? And so I think that being removed from that element certainly put a more healthy perspective for me on training, because now it's like I'm just working out in my garage. I want to be fit. I want to be able to, run around with my kid when he's 10 years old, because I'll be well into my 50s when that happens. And it really shifted what was important to me as far as being able to achieve in the gym. And it was hard for me this last open because I'm so competitive that I was worried that I would fall back into that. Like, I would do these workouts and I didn't perform. Like, I did better in the second one. Like, I improved my score, but the other two just wrecked me. And I hadn't been training for them. I just have not been training at that level. I've been training to more, stay healthy, stay fit, not really worried about the numbers I'm putting up. Like, let's just go get a good workout in so I can stay active. So I think it was funny. I think it had a positive impact because I wasn't as obsessive about it. It wasn't like, oh man, like this guy I work with who's 15 years younger than me just did this. I need to be able to compete with him. Now I can just compete more with myself.
That's great.
As with friends, I think it helped at least with my family because I have more time to be home and to be present. I'm really trying to work on that. Like, when I'm not doing work stuff, that I'm focused on hanging out with my son, focused on maximizing the time with my wife and having fun with her and doing projects. And, we'd like to spend time outdoors, whether it's walking to the park with our dogs or riding our bikes. So I think that it has cleared away a lot of the noise, and I can more focus on the things that I'm doing at that moment. Whereas when I was at CrossFit, there was a tendency for me to always kind of focus on what tomorrow was going to be and what do I need to do. And there's still a little bit of that with the podcast. Like, there's still a schedule, and I still have to go into the office and do some stuff. But it certainly helped put some things in perspective for me. And probably a blessing in disguise.
We had a guest on one time, and he talked about being kind of sort of, he wasn't a fanboy. He wasn't somebody who was so engrossed in it. Do you think that sometimes athletes in gyms need to kind of sort of step back from that and not be so engrossed with it and scale when they need to scale and just be themselves?
100%. And I get it. Believe me, you're in there with people. A lot of people, the ego gets in the way, and you want to go faster than that person. You want to lift as much. And that attitude has kept me from scaling some workouts that I know I should have scaled in order to get like the proper stimulus out of the workout.
Right.
All of a sudden a workout that's supposed to be a sprint turns into a slog for me because I didn't drop the weight to what I should do in order to move as quickly as I needed to move. So yes, a lot of people I need to understand, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a competitor. I have no problem with that. But if you're not, and you don't want to be a competitor, trying to be healthy for life, embrace scaling. And it's okay not to do RX. And I say that as someone who struggles with that all the time. And it's my competitive nature. It's like, I want to do what this is, the way this is supposed to be. And, I'm getting better at it. Not great, but I'm getting better. I have a groin pull I'm dealing with now, and I can air squat, can't lunge. And so I had to do a workout the other night that required lunges. I said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do air squats. So what? Still got a workout in. Didn't do the RX, but I got a good workout in. So who cares?
Right.
But I do think that it's easy to get caught up in that competitive thing.
So if you could go back to 2007, Sean, what would you tell him? What would today's 2021 Sean tell 2007 Sean?
I think a lot of it would be, don't worry, don't sweat the small stuff. It's gonna be okay. I spent so much time worrying about just stupid crap that was beyond my control, or relationships that have gone wrong, or and looking back on that, I wasted so much time and energy on stuff that I should not have. And I think most people probably go through that as they get older. They look back on life and they say, man, why did I even worry about that? But if I could tell myself that, I think it would have probably held some more weight, because I had a lot of people tell me that. And it's one of those crappy life lessons. You're not going to learn it unless you go through it yourself.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
But that would have been the biggest thing. It's like, just don't sweat it. It's going to be okay. It's okay to not have a plan. It's okay to not know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's okay to wake up and not know what you're going to do that day and figure it out. And it's something that my wife has been very good at getting me out of, because I still am to this day. It's like, hey, you want to go do this? And I'm thinking, okay, well, how are we going to get there? What time are we leaving? How much time are we going to spend? What are we going to take? And it's like, no, that gets in the way of having fun. So just relax, I think would have been my.
So tell us this real quick. How did you meet your wife? Tell us about you as a father and as a husband.
Okay. I met my wife at my CrossFit gym in Sacramento.
Okay.
And it's so funny. I'll totally embarrass myself here, but to tell this story. It's like the albatross around my neck. It's like the guy, the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, who's got to tell his tale. So we were just friends, and we were friends, and we hung out kind of in like the same group of friends in the gym. At the time, like I was dating somebody else, but seeing somebody else, and she got one of our mutual friends to suggest that we all go out for drinks one night, because she wanted to bring a friend of hers to meet me to see like if I passed the test. So I show up not knowing what's going on, and I invited the girl that I was seeing, and she shows up, and so that made some things awkward.
Oh no.
So that happened, and then then she was like, okay, well, he's not interested, we're just going to be friends. So we were friends, and then she got up the courage she asked me to, after a workout one night, she's like, hey, you want to go get a beer? And me, again, just thinking we're friends, being a total idiot, having no idea that she was interested. It was during the holiday season, and I remember I said, I can't tonight. I got to go help my mom make cookies.
Oh, no.
The dumbest thing I've ever said. She still gives me crap for it to this day, and rightfully so. My mother gives me crap
sweet.
for it. Yeah, but so it was just one of those, I had no clue. And then the more we started to hang out, we just had a really good friendship. And that's why I think Matt Fraser said it, date your friend and communicate like hell. Like that's, I was really lucky to date my friend. And it was, we still have a good time together, and she, gives me all kinds of crap all the time and really helps bring me down to earth. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
How has your relationship changed or remained the same, bringing a son into the world and becoming parents?
I think it's, you either grow together or you grow apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we have definitely grown together. It has been, we definitely like opposites attract is certainly a thing. And we certainly have like areas where we sort of like, it's like a puzzle piece. So like it just fits. Like she has things that she's very good at that I'm not, and vice versa. And I think having a kid really puts that to a test, because you have to kind of figure out, okay, how do we manage this? Because there is no manual. There's no right or wrong. You're going to constantly feel like a failure. But it really has, I think it's brought us closer together, because we've realized that, we went through IVF and trying to have a kid and didn't know if we were going to have one. And we're able to have one. And we feel so blessed to have, our son, that I think we're very good at not taking things for granted. Yeah, you get frustrated. Like you get frustrated with stuff when he's not sleeping or he's crying and you can't shut him up.
Right.
You're dead tired and you don't want to deal with it. But I think we've done a good job of keeping each other grounded and knowing when, you got to tag in, because, as a man, I'm not going to admit I'm having a problem. I'm like, I got this.
Sure.
It's all good. But she's going to be like, no, I got it. Take a break. And I'll do the same thing with her. So there's that trust that is developed, which is really good. And it's just nice knowing that we can work through that, and that we trust you to do it. And that sometimes I know I got to take a back seat. Sometimes she'll take the lead, and vice versa.
That's what I always tell people. So I have 2 sons of my own, right? They're young, 4 and 2. And oh yeah, man, I know all about it. But that's what I always tell young people or people who are just getting started. I'm like, take your time, develop that relationship. Not only develop your relationship, but also develop that teamwork as well. So that way, when you do have this monkey wrench of a 7-pound, 20-inch thing thrown into your life, it's like, all right, we've built this relationship much more before this kid entered. We've done teamwork things together. We know how each other work. We know what our strengths are. We know what our weaknesses are. So that way, it just makes things so much, I wouldn't say easier, but at least a little bit more compatible, throwing a third one in there and then maybe a fourth, right?
Yeah,
so,
sure.
No, I think that's amazing that you guys, seems like fatherhood has treated you well, at least from social media, from an outsider looking in.
Kicks my ass on a daily basis, but it's like I tell people, it's like CrossFit. I think CrossFitters are really uniquely positioned to be good parents, because we're used to going in to do something every day that just kicks our butt, but we do 1 or 2 things right, and we're like, oh, that's pretty awesome.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Or, wow, I just PR'd my front squat. I'm coming back tomorrow. And that's kind of like parenting. Like you just get your ass kicked.
Right.
But then there are these moments where you're like, oh, man, that was really cool. I want to do this some more.
Absolutely.
I respect CrossFit parents so much, because they bring when they bring their kids into the gym, it's like a village. Everybody takes care of the child too.
Yeah.
And it's like see one, do one, teach one. The kid wants to do the same thing too.
Yeah.
One of our episodes we had was a Fit Moms Working Round Table, where we had 3 fit moms in here.
Oh, that's cool.
Who are all 40-hour-a-week working moms, and it was just amazing to hear their stories of what each individual family does to maintain fitness in their life, maintain that their working relationship outside the home, and then keep everything together inside the home. It's cool how families have kind of evolved into this, where 20 years ago that wasn't really a thing.
For sure.
Let me ask you this, because I know your wife is in law enforcement and you are kind of sort of the face of CrossFit to some extent. How does that work when you're at home with each other? Like, how do you just kind of how do you turn that off, and how does she turn that off? And
it's been very good, because I think in both industries, so my wife is no longer a street officer. She's no longer on the street, but she's an investigator for the district attorney's office, but has spent time as a street cop. And me being in TV, those are 2 businesses that tend to be very incestuous, where you only date people in the business.
Correct.
And so you come home, like usually couples in TV come home and they talk about TV stuff, and they talk about, news stories, or they talk about, the news director being a jerk or something, whatever. And it's the same thing with, I think, law enforcement couples. They come home and they talk a lot about that stuff, because it's just what they know. So what's been nice for us is that, she goes and does her job and deals with a completely and totally different world than I deal with. And, same thing for me with her. And then we're able to come home, and that's not our thing that we kind of bond over, because it's not the thing that we have in common. So we kind of have to find other areas to talk about, whether it's, our friends or projects that we're doing around the house, or things that we want to do with our son, Max. It's nice to not have, to be in different areas, And it also, what she does also puts in to perspective. She deals with some pretty awful stuff on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And I talk about people who work out quickly for a living. It was actually one night we were last year before the games. I remember I was writing some features for the games coverage, some of the stories that ran during the CBS shows. And I'm sitting there I think I'm listening to Catherine Davidsdottir talk and kind of like taking notes on what she said in the interview. So I'm doing that at our little kitchen table, and she's up at the kitchen island listening to an interview with one of the victims. And I was like, man, we live in different worlds.
Opposite worlds.
So it's nice to have that perspective, but I think it's also, you can get very jaded as a law enforcement officer, and I totally understand that. I've helped keep her from kind of going down that path, and she has helped me keeping things in perspective with what I do and understanding that, there are people out there who have a lot bigger problems than I have.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, I think it's that time. You ready?
Yeah, so we have this last segment. It's called Rapid Fire Questions. So we ask you a question, you just spit it back.
Okay.
All right.
Ready.
You want to just go? We'll just shoot from the hip.
All right. Who's your favorite bass player of all time?
Jason Newsted.
Oh, man.
Right.
I wanted you to say Paul Sidman from The Clash, but anyway.
All right.
Favorite cheat meal?
Favorite cheat meal? Oh, man. Sunday, probably.
All right.
Your favorite bass to play?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a favorite. I would love, as far as a brand goes, I would love to get a 5-string. I've never had I'd really love to get a 5-string bass. So whoever makes a great 5-string bass, I'll take that.
Okay.
All right. Which one was your favorite call? You have two very famous calls in CrossFit, right? You've got 2011 Fittest Man on Earth, 2012, 2013, 2014 Rich Froning, Fittest Man in history. And then you've got the Matt Fraser sprint event. What can't this guy do? So out of those two, which one's your favorite?
It's tough because they're both very different. I planned 24, and I got very lucky with the way that event played out so that I could take that call.
Yeah.
The Fraser one was unplanned and was a genuine reaction, so I'll probably take that one.
I love that one. That's probably one of my favorite of all-time events in CrossFit.
So you have your Boba Fett cosplay outfit or costume. Does your wife have one?
No.
But your son Max does.
Max will inherit mine, but yeah, we'll get him something for sure.
He has a Chewbacca one you had on the other day.
Yeah, he's got a Chewbacca outfit that we put him in.
Nice.
All right, what do you get more amped up for, the NHL draft or the NFL draft?
Oh, NFL draft. NHL's hard because you don't see those guys usually for 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
That's true. So tell us about your 3 dogs.
My 3 dogs. Okay, so I have 3 dogs. Obviously, I have an Old English bulldog named Spike, and he is 9 years old. He is like a land whale. He is 95 pounds. He's getting long, a little long in the tooth, so he just likes to lay around a little bit, not be disturbed. He's kind of a grumpy old man. He still goes on some pretty good walks. He's actually still doing very well for 9 years old. But he's relatively sedentary around the house, likes to get petted on, very, just stay off my lawn, leave me alone, I'm relaxing. That's our oldest. And then we have Scout, who is a Pekingese pit sort of hound mix. She's the smallest of the group. She is, how old is she? 5 now? She's almost 5. She runs the house. She keeps Spike in line. She keeps on. She is the one that is like my wife's best friend, follows my wife everywhere, rides her, she'll run alongside her when she rides her bike. Loves everybody. She's a dog we can take anywhere. And then we have Dozer, who is 4, who is like an Akita hound, Great Dane mix. And he's a horse. He's like 90 pounds, and he is sort of the energetic goofball of the group. He always wants to play. He can get a little too hyped up sometimes, and he's jumping all over you. Still take him to training on a regular basis, so working with him. But they definitely keep us busy, and I'm sure if we could have more, we probably would. But 3 is
that's a lot.
We probably should have stopped at 2. But sure. Yeah, we got 3. 2 you can man to man. 3 is now you're playing zone defense.
I got 3. It's tough.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Let's say that Harrison, our producer here, meets you at your local airport and gives you a black card, prepaid black card, and you can go anywhere you want outside of COVID, and you and your wife are going on a vacation. Where y'all going?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably either Hawaii or Australia.
Perfect.
Probably Hawaii.
Cool.
All right, so it's your first time ever to program a concert, and you're a punk band aficionado. Who are your 3 main bands that are going to play?
Oh, okay. It's going to be Pulley. It's going to be Face to Face. And let's see, who would be the third? Probably Goldfinger.
Nice. And tell us real quick about Cousin Dale.
Cousin Dale, oh man. So Cousin Dale was the band that I joined in college. We still play every now and then.
Oh, that's awesome.
We are I would say a mediocre sort of band we just like to have fun. None of really great musicians, but we have a good time. There's a couple songs that we did that I was like, okay, those might have potential. Couple in there. But yeah, it's just 4 of us. These 3 guys I met when I was in college. 2 of them who were in my sportscasting class. One still works he works at the Fox affiliate out here in San Francisco. I think he's a head editor in the morning, I think. And then my friend Brian, who I think he's in medical insurance in San Francisco. And then our drummer named Frank had a kid, but we haven't played since 2019. But it's been fun. Like I really enjoy playing. I wish I could do it more, and I look forward to getting back to it eventually.
Hang on, I've got one more question. I got one more question.
All right.
All right, we're gonna men and female. Who's your dark horse male breaking into the top 10 this year?
Ooh, breaking into the top 10.
Dark horse.
Oh man. Let me think. That's a good question because I there's so many people who are already in the top 10. God, I could have said Sam Quant, but he finished second.
That's a problem.
That's male. You said male or female?
Well, we'll do male and then female. Yeah.
I don't have an answer on the male. You know what? Okay, I'll give you a dark horse. How about Spencer Panchik?
Love it. Yep. How cool.
I would love to. I think there's a very good chance you get 3 Panchik brothers in the top 10.
Yeah,
I agree.
That would be awesome.
So that'd be my male dark horse. My female, I would have to pick one of the teenagers, and I don't even know if that's a dark horse given how well they've done. But I would not be shocked if either Mal O'Brien or Emma Carey winds up there. I think the only thing that they have to prove that they can do is compete in person alongside some of the best and go through an extremely grueling weekend in Madison and be able to sort of maintain that level. That's the one doubt that I have. They do have games experience in the teenage division, but it steps up quite a bit.
Oh, big time.
The individuals. But they have passed every test that's been thrown at them. Like every time I thought, this is what's going to knock them back. That's not what happened. So wouldn't shock me if one of those 2. And then I think maybe another name would be Karen Freyova, who's been, she's had some really good performances in the past. Keep an eye on her. That was a good question. I got to think about that. But Tommy is the guy to ask that.
Yeah.
Tommy is just the walking media of those things.
So let me ask you this one real quick since you brought that up. What is the biggest, since you've seen everybody, what is the biggest hole in everyone's fitness?
I think athleticism. Just being able to do, kind of like new non-fitness related stuff is like being able, for example, going out and be able to play a team sport very well. I think all these CrossFit athletes are very good at CrossFit and fitness, but I don't know how many of them are really good at I'm going to pick that person for my soccer team, or I'm going to pick that person for my baseball team. Or I think, that guy would be great as a wide receiver or could pick up any sport. I don't know about that, but I think when you look at some of those odd events that are programmed, there are a lot of people super fit that you're like, what are you doing? Like, how are you not figuring this out?
Right.
How do you not know how to ride a bike effectively? So I think that would be the biggest thing, is just doing stuff that is not quote unquote, fitness related. So more just, sport related stuff like that. Like who could run a post pattern, or who could, be good at shooting 3-pointers, or, who'd be the best at hitting a baseball or throwing, stuff like that. If you think back to the softball throw in 2011, if you watch that, I mean,
there he is. He's back.
All right,
again.
I just hooked you up to my phone, so I don't know what's going on my computer. So clearly that's on my end.
Not
okay.
a problem. We're almost done. I'm going to ask you one more quick rapid fire question.
All right.
All right. So if you could pick any professional athlete outside of CrossFit, obviously, so any professional athlete, NFL, NBA, and say, hey, I really want to see you do CrossFit and you think they could crush it, who do you think it would be?
Oh, that's easy. I'd take Aaron Donald.
Aaron?
The Rams.
Okay, gotcha.
That guy is a monster. I mean, and like 6-pack as a defensive lineman, with throwing grown men around. Total just force of nature. Obviously, being a bigger guy would probably have some problems with some of the gymnastics movements, but I would love to see what that guy could do with a barbell.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, man.
Well, I think that's let me ask this question. This is not part of it, but where can they find you on the social medias if they want to talk to you? Or
people can find me. I'm on Instagram. I'm SWoodland, the number 53. I'm on Facebook, but not as much. On Twitter, same thing, SWoodland53. And then our podcast site is at Talking Elite Fitness on Instagram, and you can hit us up there. Or I try to respond to messages that are sent to me as best as I possibly can. Don't get a ton, but yeah, you guys want to reach out, happy to chat.
Absolutely, man. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time out of a weekday. I can tell you firsthand, I've been following you for. I'm a personal fanboy of yours and Tommy.
Thanks,
I
David.
listen to your guys'
Thank you.
podcast pretty much religiously every week. I look forward to it coming out. So love what you guys are doing. Keep putting out great content, and I know the whole community just loves what y'all are doing.
Tell Tommy we'll get him on next.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, tell Tommy.
That guy.
Tell him we said what up.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
thank you very much.
Organization right there. Hey guys, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that and for having me on. And it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Sean.
you. We'll see you down the road. Take care, my man.
Yeah.